the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, that's a hot one.
It is. We've pulled together a stack of fascinating articles, some research, and even some pretty compelling whistleblower reports. Our mission here, to cut through all that noise, give you the clearest possible picture of what's actually happening, and maybe more importantly, why it matters for, your financial future.
That's exactly right. We'll explore everything from these rumors flying around about benefit increases.
Oh, yeah.
Some pretty serious data security concerns. And then there's that ongoing, very public debate about how much influence, really, the White House should have over the nation's central bank.
So, yeah, get ready for some surprising facts and hopefully some essential insights.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this first one. There's been a lot of buzz online, you see it everywhere on social media, about a potential $600 increase for supplemental security income, SSI, benefits, supposedly coming this September.
Right. And look, it sounds like a huge boost, a really significant amount for recipients. So it's understandable why people are hopeful.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't be?
But what's fascinating here, maybe beyond the hope itself, is just how fast these kinds of rumors can spread. You know?
Wildfire.
Totally. The truth, however, well, there just isn't a scheduled $600 increase for SSI this September. Not in 2025, this whole thing. It actually comes down to a simple calendar adjustment.
A calendar adjustment?
Yeah, a Labor Day. It falls on Monday, September 1st this year. So it messes with the payment schedule.
Ah, okay. So what does this actually mean for recipients then, if it's not an extra $600?
It means that the SSI payments, which usually go out on the 1st of the month, they get shifted, the September payment. It was actually issued early, back on August 29th.
Oh, so they got two payments in August.
Exactly. They got their regular August 1st payment and the early September payment. But the flip side is they'll get no payment in September itself.
Okay. So no one's missing money overall, but the timing is different.
Precisely. It's a common thing for holidays or weekends, But it does mean recipients got that double payment in August and then a gap in September. It doesn't mean extra money, just a different distribution.
That could still be tricky for budgeting, though, if you're not expecting.
Oh, absolutely. Managing that gap requires planning, for sure.
Okay, so just to be clear, what are the actual SSI benefit amounts for 2025, the real numbers?
Right, the facts.
Yeah.
For 2025, the maximum federal SSI payment is $967 per month for an individual. For a couple, it's $485 per month. And there's a category for an essential person that's $484.
And those numbers include the cost of living adjustment.
Yes, they reflect that 2.5% COLA, the cost of living adjustment, that kicked in back in January 2025. And it's really important to remember these SSI rules, the payment dates, the holiday shifts, they're separate from other Social Security benefits.
Like retirement or disability.
Exactly. Those follow different schedules and aren't affected by these specific SSI holiday shifts.
Got it. Now, you mentioned rumors spreading. We've also seen claims historically, like back in 2017, where politicians tried to take credit for Social Security increases. Seems like a pattern.
It really does. And this is where it gets, well, kind of interesting or maybe frustrating, depending on your view. Historically, these Social Security payments, the annual CPIEs, they're based on a government measure of inflation.
Right. It's automatic.
It's automatic. It's set by formula. The White House, any president doesn't have direct involvement in setting these. It's just not how the system works.
So claims of credit are just
pretty much political maneuvering. Yeah. It was even fact-checked specifically regarding those 2017 claims. The mechanism is independent of that kind of influence.
Okay. So while that $600 September boost was, hype, there are actual significant proposals being discussed for Social Security. Some are linked to this idea of a Social Security Expansion Act, maybe under a Trump administration.
Yes, and these aren't just small tweaks. They represent some potentially major changes to the program.
So this raises a really important question then. What exactly are these proposals, and what could they mean?
It's a critical point because these proposals really touch on the fundamental future of Social Security. Let's break them down.
Okay, first up, this idea of a targeted monthly boost.
Right. Proposal 1 is a $600 monthly boost, but specifically aimed at lower-income seniors. The target is tied to 125% of the federal poverty line.
And the argument for that?
Supporters say, look, this would lift millions out of poverty, restore some dignity. It directly addresses, real hardship.
But the counterargument must be the cost. right? $600 a month is a lot.
Exactly. Critics immediately warn it could be, well, reckless, putting immense pressure on the trust fund, potentially leading to runaway program growth and, bringing that insolvency date even closer.
A classic trade-off then. Immediate relief versus long-term stability.
That's the core tension. Then there's another idea, proposal 2, a universal monthly raise.
Universal meaning?
Meaning a $200 monthly raise across the board for every Social Security and disability recipient. That adds up to $2,400 a year.
Okay, and the pitch for that one?
Proponents see it as a kind of smart stimulus for seniors, especially with inflation biting and Medicare premiums going up, helps people cope, puts money into the economy.
And the downside, the criticism.
Opponents call it a dangerous precedent. They worry it's politicians basically buying loyalty with, well, an IOU that future generations just can't afford to pay, turns a safety net into maybe a future liability.
Okay, and then proposal 3 gets into the nitty-gritty, the COLA formula itself.
Yeah, this one's technical but really important. The idea is to scrap the current COLA formula. Right now it tracks urban wage earners and clerical workers. That's the CPIE index.
Right.
The proposal is to switch to the Consumer Price Index for the elderly, the CPIE.
Because the argument is that reflects seniors spending better.
That's the argument. That CPIE better captures what seniors actually spend money on, things like healthcare, prescription drugs, housing, which often rise faster than the general inflation tracked by CPIW.
So proponents would say this is fairer, more accurate for seniors.
They'd champion it as finally bringing, justice or fairness to seniors whose costs aren't fully captured now. Makes sense on the surface.
There's always a but.
There's always a but. Critics look at that potential shift and worry it could, quote, blow Social Security's obligations sky high.
Meaning
It could force much higher taxes down the line or deepen the deficit significantly because you're indexing benefits to a potentially faster-growing cost measure. It really brings up that big question, who pays for those rising costs? Current workers? Or does the benefit's real value erode under the old index?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And funding any of these big expansions? Where does the money come from?
Yes, the funding mechanism. This is probably the most controversial part, lifting the payroll tax cap.
Explain that.
Okay, right now, you only pay Social Security taxes on income up to a certain limit each year. Above that cap, you don't pay any more Social Security tax on additional earnings.
Got it.
This proposal would change that. It suggests taxing income above $250,000 for Social Security.
So higher earners pay more into the system.
Significantly more. Supporters claim doing this could keep the program solvent for, they estimate, maybe 75 years. They argue it's fair, makes the wealthy contribute more proportionally.
And the criticism? I can guess.
You can guess. Critics argue it's punishing success. They worry it could push investors, high earners, maybe even businesses to move their money or themselves offshore to avoid the higher taxes, potentially hurting the overall economy.
Okay, so lots of big ideas, big debates. What does all this mean for the actual health of Social Security right now? The trust fund specifically?
Well, this brings us to a pretty sobering update from Social Security's own chief actuary, the main trust fund, the Old Age and Survivors Insurance, or OASI. It's now projected to run out of reserves, to be depleted by the fourth quarter of 2032.
2032? That sounds soon. Is that earlier than they thought before?
It is. It's earlier than previous estimates.
Why? What's speeding things up?
It's a mix of things. Demographic trends are a big part of it. People are generally living longer, which is good, but the workforce isn't growing fast enough to support the increasing number of retirees.
Right, the ratio is shifting.
Exactly. That's led the OASI Trust to run a deficit for the last 3 years. And then there's legislation. A recent tax law, sometimes called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Okay.
It extends some 2017 tax cuts and gives seniors over 65 an extra tax deduction. That's projected to reduce the revenue going into Social Security by about $168.6 billion over the next 10 years.
So less money coming in, more going out, and the depletion date moves closer.
That's the math.
And what happens, realistically, if that trust fund hits zero in 2032, what does depletion actually mean for people getting checks?
It's stark. If Congress doesn't act before then, the money still coming in from payroll taxes will only be enough to cover about 77% of the benefits that are scheduled to be paid.
So, an automatic cut.
An automatic cut of roughly 23% for all retirees across the board. It's a huge potential shock. And many experts, they look at these recent laws and say it's just kicking the can down the road.
Avoiding the hard choices needed for long-term solvency.
Pretty much. Postponing the inevitable reckoning without fixing the underlying structural issues.
Wow. Okay, so solvency is a huge issue. But there's another angle here, something you mentioned earlier, data security.
Yes, absolutely critical. Beyond the finances, we have serious concerns raised about the security of all the personal data the Social Security Administration holds.
And this comes from a whistleblower.
That's right. A whistleblower named Charles Borges. He was the chief data officer at the SSA. He's alleged that another agency, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, potentially put, get this, over 300 million American Social Security data at risk.
300 million. What kind of data are we talking about?
The most sensitive kind: health diagnoses, income details, banking information, even familial relationships. All this, reportedly, was uploaded to an unsecured cloud account.
Unsecured.
Unsecured and, crucially, not subject to the usual oversight and security protocols.
That sounds incredibly dangerous. What are the potential consequences if that data got out?
It's almost hard to overstate. If that data fell into the wrong hands, you could see widespread identity theft on an unprecedented scale. People could lose access to vital benefits, healthcare, food assistance. The government might even face the nightmare scenario of having to reissue Social Security numbers.
The cost and chaos of that would be immense.
Massive. And this situation allegedly happened because DOGE was given this sweeping mandate to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and with it, unprecedented access to huge amounts of government data, but maybe without the necessary guardrails.
How did the SSA respond when these allegations came out?
Well, the SSA officially stated that they take whistleblower complaints seriously, but their public comments seem to sort of downplay Borges' specific accusations. They maintain that all personal data is stored securely in walled-off environments with robust safeguards.
So denial of any breach.
Essentially, yes. They said they aren't aware of any compromise, so you have a direct conflict between the whistleblower's detailed claims and the agency's assurances.
Okay, a lot to worry about with Social Security. Let's shift gears now to the Federal Reserve.
Okay.
Another pillar of the financial system and its independence seems to be under, well, intense fire lately.
Yeah, intense fire is a good way to put it. The Fed's traditional independence from short-term political pressure has really been challenged, particularly by former President Trump.
He's been very vocal, hasn't he?
Extremely vocal. A longtime critic, especially of the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell. Trump has frequently and very publicly called for immediate interest rate cuts to boost the economy. He's blamed Powell personally for economic slowdowns, even threatened to fire him.
Which is a big deal, challenging that independence.
It's a direct challenge to a core tenet of modern central banking.
And it wasn't just Powell, right? What about Fed Governor Lisa Cook? There were reports about attempts to remove her, too.
Yes, there were reports indicating Trump claimed on his social media platform, Truth Social, that he was firing Governor Cook, citing alleged mortgage fraud.
Could he actually do that? Just fire a Fed governor?
Well, Governor Cook publicly stated she wouldn't leave her post, and legally it's very murky. A president can't just fire a Fed governor easily. It requires cause, which is a legal standard that isn't actually clearly defined in this context.
So it would likely end up in court.
Almost certainly. It would probably go all the way to the Supreme Court. It's also worth noting that other sources, like the Brookings Institution, they had a slightly different take. They didn't mention Cook being fired, but rather another governor, Adriana Kugler, leaving her seat early. That vacancy would then allow Trump to nominate a replacement. So the specifics are a bit unclear, but the pressure is undeniable.
Okay, so setting aside the political drama for a second, why is this independence considered so important? Why do economists and markets care so much?
It really comes down to trust and long-term stability. The overwhelming consensus among economists is that an independent central bank, one insulated from short-term political goals, is crucial for keeping inflation under control and ensuring the economy runs smoothly.
Because politicians might want different things.
Exactly. Presidents naturally often want lower interest rates. It can boost the economy in the short term, makes borrowing cheaper, looks good, especially around election time.
Makes sense.
But history shows pretty clearly that when central banks are under direct political control, you almost inevitably end up with higher and much more volatile inflation in the long run. Short-term gain leads to long-term pain.
Do we have examples of that?
Yeah.
Where political meddling caused problems?
Oh, definitely. You just have to look back at the stagflation of the 1970s. Presidents Johnson and Nixon both pressured the Fed chair at the time, Arthur Burns, to keep interest rates low even as inflation was taking off.
And the result?
Double-digit inflation that really hurt the economy and took years and painful measures to fix. More recently, look at Turkey. The leader there, Erdogan, had this unorthodox idea that lowering interest rates would somehow reduce inflation.
That sounds counterintuitive.
Completely counter to standard economics, and the result. Inflation in Turkey soared to over 85% in 2023. It really makes you ask that question. Is the potential for short-term political advantage worth risking that kind of long-term economic chaos?
So independence allows the Fed to make unpopular decisions when needed.
Precisely. It lets them take tough steps, like raising interest rates significantly to fight inflation, even if it makes mortgages more expensive, slows down hiring, and isn't popular politically.
Like Paul Volcker did.
Paul Volcker in the late 70s and early 80s is the classic example. He jacked up interest rates to almost 20% to finally break the back of that high inflation. There were protests, a deep recession, huge political pressure, but he stuck with it because the Fed had the independence to do what was needed for long-term health.
And without that independence,
Markets get nervous. Financial markets rely on predictability and trust in the central bank's commitment to stability. If they think the Fed is being driven by politics, not economics, confidence erodes. You could see stock prices fall, bond yields spike, instability.
okay, so given all this pressure and the coming end of Powell's term, what's the outlook? What's happening with Fed leadership?
Well, Jerome Powell's term as chair is up in May 2026. That's not too far off. According to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, the current White House plans to start interviewing potential successors this autumn.
Any names floating around?
Reports mention there are apparently 11 serious candidates being vetted already. And of course, if there's a change in administration, former President Trump has already appointed 2 people currently on the Board of Governors, Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman. They could potentially be elevated to top roles, like chair or vice chair.
So the actual individuals matter, but it's also about the overall direction, the character of the Fed they represent.
Exactly. It's about the philosophy. Trump and his allies, they talk about wanting a Fed that gets back to its core mission, focusing purely on sound money, monetary discipline. They criticize what they see as Fed overreach into areas like climate change, risk assessment, or diversity mandates.
And the other side,
Yeah.
the critics of that view.
Critics see these efforts to exert more presidential control as, well, a power grab. They worry it could politicize the Fed, turn it into a tool for whatever the current administration's agenda is. That, they argue, would undermine its credibility, built up over decades, and could cause real market volatility if Fed decisions seem unpredictable or politically motivated. It's a fundamental debate about what the central bank should be and do.
Okay, let's try to wrap this all up. We've covered a lot of ground. We've seen how talk about Social Security benefits can really take off, create these widespread rumors.
Yeah, like that $600 boost myth.
Exactly. And then the very real complex proposals to change Social Security, facing these huge financial hurdles. And let's not forget those deeply concerning data security allegations.
Right. And then shifting to the Fed, this intense debate over its independence, something economists see as vital for stability, now facing really unprecedented political headwinds. These things aren't separate issues, are they?
No, they feel very connected. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The way these big forces interact, Social Security's future solvency, the arguments over benefits, data risks, the Fed's independence, it all has really profound implications for, well, every American's financial future.
It really brings up a big question, doesn't it, for all of us? How do we as a society find that balance? The balance between maybe an immediate desire for relief or for certain economic shifts, and that fundamental need for long-term financial stability, for trustworthy, independent institutions managing